This is the story called Alone in the Ocean by Donna Tom. It's a memoir, so it is a memory of an actual event. My escape from Vietnam was the most dangerous and most difficult experience of my life. At dawn on October 14th, 1978, my mother, brother, cousin, and I went to Vietnam, each of us carrying a small bag of clothes and another bag of dry food and water. We gathered together at the place where we had registered with the government and waited for the bus to the port. I was surprised by the number of people who were also waiting to leave. The people were all excited when the buses came. We packed ourselves in the bus because we were afraid to be left behind. Our bus started to go, followed by my father, uncle, and cousin on motorcycles. Our hearts were all as heavy as the overloaded bus. When we arrived at an unknown port in a small village, we were met by some officers who called our names and studied our faces, matching them with the pictures on their lists before they allowed us on board. That was the moment when I felt very concerned about leaving my father. I swallowed my tears and kept my eyes shut. My heart was crying bitterly inside as if thousands of blades were cutting it. Then my father said to me and my brother, "You have to listen to your mother and take care of each other. Do not complain about any hardships, because the most bitter of the bitter you suffer will make you into the best people." I was as heavy as a stone when I heard these words. Suddenly I heard our names being called and we kissed each other goodbye. We dragged ourselves on the boat with heavy footsteps. We started our adventure on a small boat, only 60 feet long. It carried 230 people. Our baggage and food were thrown into the cabin, and the women and children were forced to jump down into the cargo hold. It was all in darkness, and we could just sit on the floor with bent knees. Soon the hold was filled with people packed in like sardines. I fell asleep as the boat swayed. Soon everyone got seasick, and babies began to cry. My throat was burning so much that I needed water. For 2 days, I could not keep anything in my stomach. On the third day, I needed to go to the washroom, so people on the deck pulled me out. I felt as if I had been freed from hell and that it had been years since I had had fresh air. Greedily, I inhaled the fresh sea breeze. I decided not to go back down into the hold anymore, and so I hid in a corner by the rail. We were all alone in the Pacific Ocean. There was only an endless view of water and sky. I often saw some dolphins leaping around our boat, but to me they seemed evil rather than playful. In the night there was a storm with heavy rain pouring down and gusty wind blowing so sharply I was quivering and chattering all night long. On the fourth day we saw some large ships not far away. Eagerly we put up an SOS flag to ask for help, but they all steered away from us at full speed, as if they had just seen a group of violent animals. I was so depressed by their indifference and selfishness. Perhaps they were afraid they would have to share food with us. With disappointment again and again, we went on, slowly under the fiery sun. Once we thought we were in luck because we saw a glistening boat which looked like an island. As we got closer, we found that it was a gigantic aircraft carrier. Even its life raft was bigger than our boat. We used all our strength to shout out to get the sailors' attention. When a few people came out, our captain spoke English to them to explain our situation and begged them to let us aboard because our boat had lost its direction. But they refused to accept us and pointed in the direction of Malaysia. The next morning we were happier because we saw some mountains and seagulls, which suggested that there were people not far away. In a few hours we saw 2 Malaysian fishing boats, and the fishermen helped us land on an island. I had expected to be met with delicious food and drinks, but the Malaysians there did not welcome us, and instead guarded us closely with rifles as if we were criminals. We had to continue our boat life, even though we were on the land, because we had to share the little food that was left over. That night we slept on the sand facing the beach under the open sky. I felt sad because only beggars did that in my native country. We were noticed by a patrolling boat the next morning. Some Malaysian officers landed with guns pointing at us and searched our baggage to see if we had any gunfire. They were very severe and ordered us to get back into our boat and leave that island. But fortunately, our boat was damaged and could no longer move. Then they sent 3 motorboats to take us to a Vietnamese refugee camp, which was far away from any town. Da Dang was an island with nothing but mountains and trees. By the time we got there, there was more than 10,000 Vietnamese occupying the place. The trees at the foot of the hills had been cut down for cooking. Spaces were built up for plastic tents. So we were assigned to go up and live on the mountain where we cleared the land. The Malaysian soldiers were corrupt. They changed our US dollars into Malaysian money and bought our jewelry for very low prices. Besides, they sold us necessary products such as food at very high prices. But we had no choice because we needed all those things to survive. Life in the concentration camp was similar to Robinson Crusoe's. We had to build our tents with some long branches and sleep on the ground. We had to climb up over the hill to get a bath in a stream. We had to cut down trees to get wood for cooking, and we had to get water from the wells. If it was raining, we had to cook under the tent and stay outside in the rain. Life was so hard that we had nothing to worry about with the next meal. The Canadian High Commission decided our fate. We had been waiting for 2 months to meet the Canadian delegation, but they visited the island just once a month, and they could only interview a few families. We were supposed to wait at least 1 year for an interview. However, we had brought proof of sponsorship of my aunt in Canada. It was very hard to talk to the officials because they did not meet anybody except those whose names they called. One day, my brother and I waited outside until one of them came out for some fresh air. Although we did not speak English that well at the moment, he understood us when he saw the sponsorship form. Immediately, he had an interview with my family, and after asking some questions and filling in some forms, we were accepted. We were also delighted that we could not sleep all night. Our names were called to leave for Canada a few days after the interview. We could hardly believe it until our names were called again and again throughout the loudspeakers. We immediately packed up and left the evil island for a small town. We were put in a big villa with about 200 people who were also accepted for Canada. We waited there for 2 months as they checked our health. Supplies there were sufficient, and we could buy some other things at the local stores. We enjoyed living there more than at Bedong, and so 2 months passed very quickly. Today, our names were added to the list of those going to the capital for some documents, and then for Canada. The day I left Malaysia was the most meaningful day for me. When I stepped onto the plane, I knew that all the evil and hardship were left behind me forever, and glorious days were waiting for me ahead. I had been living now in Canada for 2 years, and I've grown to love this country, but I feel guilty about the material comforts and the freedom I enjoy here while my father is suffering in Vietnam. I will use whatever strength I have left to get my father out as soon as possible. I also pray that those still on the sea are secure. My escape from Vietnam by sea will haunt me until the day I die.